won a spot as champion didn't get into the college. The exam was a recruiting and training ground for a magical special ops unit. Everyone in our society, magical and non-magical, would freak out if they discovered that. Still, I hadn't been prepared for the examiners to magically enforce our silence. My back stayed rigid as I stared at the padded chair. When I'd talked to a guy from school who'd gone through the exam a few years ago, he'd said he couldn't tell me anything. I'd assumed he'd been worried about facing punishment if he let the examiner's secrets slip, but apparently he'd meant the couldn't part literally. "The chantment will be quick and painless," the woman by the chair said, still with that smile that I guessed she meant to be reassuring. As if I could trust that was true, or even that the chantment would only do what Welch had said, after all the lies I'd already been told. I wet my lips. I'd hoped to work around my position as champion to find a way to expose what really happened here. That was going to be a hell of a lot harder if I couldn't speak about anything I'd seen or been through. "Is there a problem?" Examiner Welch asked. "I wasn't expecting it," I said, scrambling to think of any excuse to get out of this. I came up pretty much blank. "Is it really necessary? I can keep quiet without any compulsion." Somehow Welch managed to look skeptical and impassive at the same time. I'd been careful not to say anything too antagonistic about the Confed when they might hear, but after the defiant way I'd approached their trials, maybe I couldn't blame him for not taking me at my word either. "It's policy," he said. "You agreed to this by entering the exam. It'll be easier to conduct the chantment if you accept it willingly. Can we proceed?" It would have been nice if they'd let us read the fine print ahead of time. I dragged in a breath. The hum of energy in the air, like a faint but steady melody, wrapped around my shoulders to embrace me. I had more than just the people harmed by the Confed's machinations to protect. The magic had reached out to me and pleaded with me to pay attention, to notice the way destructive castings hurt it as much as whatever they were destroying. I was the only one who'd felt its presence like that. If I lost my connection to the magic and it had no one else to speak up for it, it might completely die. I had no choice here. I had to play along like a good little soldier while I watched for the right opportunities. There were ways to expose people without speaking. Enchantments could be broken. "All right," I said. I forced my legs to unlock and climbed into the chair. It was more comfortable than the dentist version, the padding silky soft instead of sticky plastic. I leaned my head back, trying to ignore the thump of my pulse. Welch shut the door, leaving me alone with the woman. A chantment like this, designed to permanently affect the mind in very specific ways, must take a huge amount of concentration. He wouldn't want to distract her. "Close your eyes," the mage suggested. I did it with a clench of my jaw. She leaned over me, singing a verse under her breath. The magic thrummed around us alongside her song. Bit by bit, it resonated with her intent and tingled into my forehead and scalp. The strands of magic didn't affect my thoughts in any noticeable way. She hadn't been lying about the painless part, at least. Would they be able to make the same promise to Finn when they brought him into one of these rooms to burn him out? My fingers started to curl into my palms. I willed them to relax before they turned into fists, but the ache of anger remained. Before I'd come here, Finn Lockwood had been just a boy I'd watched from afar in his academy's library. A boy I'd never thought I'd even talk to, because of the charmed old magic life he obviously led. But he'd given up a chosen spot to enter the exam and prove he actually deserved that privilege. He'd pushed himself to his limits and stood by me every step of the way. With his bright smile and his wry honesty, he'd worked his way into my heart. If I ducked my head right now, I might still be able to catch a hint of his fresh, sweet scent from our last embrace.